This is The Fifth Estate, a conversation between young African scholars from the Fort Hall School of Government and Professor Mutahi Gunyi. We will begin this Sunday with the story of General Sani Abacha, as told by Nigerians who did not like him. Sani Abacha staged a coup in Nigeria. Then he took too much Viagra and died. When he arrived in hell, a quick SMS was sent to Lucifer, informing him that General Sani Abacha from Nigeria had arrived. Annoyed by this, Lucifer threw a tantrum, saying there can only be one Lucifer in hell. Ask Abacha to seek residence in heaven. And so General Abacha traveled to heaven. At the pearly gates, he met St. Peter. But on checking the records, St. Peter told Abacha that the last record they had of him was when he was 8. They could not admit him in heaven either. To date, Abacha's soul is still wandering in the air. The Abacha effect is also compared to the Lucifer principle. This principle kicks in whenever two opposites unite. And the unity between UHURU and Raila can only attract the Lucifer principle. Allow us to break it down.
According to the Lucifer principle, good and evil are different sides of the same coin. In fact, good attracts evil, and evil attracts good. For every virtue, there is a corresponding vice. This is why Elohim the Almighty has a corresponding evil known as Lucifer. In fact, Lucifer in his badness was created by Jehovah in his goodness. We celebrate the goodness of the handshake. In fact, we embrace and kiss the political romance between UHURU and Raila. But when the honeymoon is over, a corresponding evil will emerge. And this is the story of Uhuru Kenyatta. Because he is a good man, he can only attract evil. But Raila's badness has attracted good fortunes. Raila is like General Sani Abacha. This man beheaded the poets and castrated the prophets. He was bad. If Abacha had not taken too much Viagra that night, he would still be president of Nigeria today. What is our point here? For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. The action that is the handshake will attract an equal and opposite reaction. We don't know the shape it will take, but it will be equal to and opposite of the handshake.
Maybe the handshake was premature, and maybe we will only understand this with time. More so if the Lucifer principle applies to the handshake and an equal and opposite reaction emerges. We say so because we did the handshake to avoid conflict. We chose peace over strength, romance over the heartbreak that makes you a stronger person. Maybe UHURU is like the man who spent hours watching a butterfly struggle to emerge from its cocoon. The poor butterfly made a small hole, but its body was too large to get through it. After a whole day struggling, the butterfly gave up. The good and kind-hearted man, like UHURU, decided to help it. He took a pair of scissors, cut open the cocoon, and released the butterfly. However, the butterfly's body was underdeveloped. It could not fly. It died. What the kind man did not understand was that struggling out of the cocoon was nature's way of growing the butterfly, strengthening it, giving it its wings and its color. Is it possible that the handshake was the act of a kind man? Did UHURU open the national cocoon too early, letting out the butterfly before it was fully formed? Maybe.
Maybe the handshake was the path of paradise, the path of least resistance. And maybe conflict and pain are better than peace without closure. Maybe the handshake was about individuals and families, not about the dreams of a nation. And as James Langston Hughes asked, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? What happens to the dreams of Kenyans when rivals unite? Are the dreams of the rivals those of the nation? From every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. That is the Lucifer principle. If the handshake action is not about our national dreams, it will attract an equal and opposite reaction. And in our view, the Lucifer reaction to the handshake will come from David Maraga. As UHURU and Raila are romancing the stone, Maraga will dissolve parliament. Just like that. If goodness attracts evil, the goodness of the handshake will attract a Maraga response. Merry Christmas.
I hold a different view about the handshake. If every action attracts an equal and opposite reaction, we have no idea what reaction the handshake will attract. Maybe the handshake is a disaster, and maybe it's not. Once upon a time, the horse of a Chinese farmer ran away. On hearing this, the neighbors proclaimed, "This is a disaster." But the farmer replied, "Maybe, maybe not." The next morning, the horse returned with 3 other wild horses. The neighbors were impressed. They declared to the farmer, "What a wonderful gift from God." But the farmer replied, "Maybe, maybe not." A day later, the farmer's son tried to ride the wild horses. He was thrown off and broke his leg. The idle neighbors concluded, "This bad luck has now degenerated to a curse." But the farmer replied, "Maybe, maybe not." After 1 week, the military came to the village. They were looking for strong young men to send to war. And because the farmer's son had broken his leg, he was disqualified. The neighbor's sons died in the unnecessary war, but the farmer's son was spared. And so I ask, is the handshake a disaster? Maybe, maybe not.
This Christmas season, I want to declare that I am a follower of the carpenter from Nazareth. I am a believer in the cross and its power. And the reason why I follow Yeshua the carpenter from Nazareth is because he spoke uncomfortable truths. He called politicians vipers, hypocrites, and truth-sayers. He had no mercy. This Christmas I am inspired by the birth of this truth-speaking carpenter. And this is why I must speak the truth in my heart about the handshake. If the handshake is a conspiracy to finish William Ruto, it will fall flat on the face. Ruto is probably a thug, we don't know. Maybe he's a Mukora, we have no idea. But Elohim, the Almighty, does not use perfect people. He likes them weak and imperfect. He likes Mukoras. And if you read the Christmas story, all the women in the lineage of Christ were prostitutes and slave queens. It's a fact. Even Mary, the mother of Christ, suffered the shame of teenage pregnancy, like our school children who are doing KCPE. She was a virgin who got pregnant. It was a contradiction. The carpenter from Nazareth taught us to embrace contradictions. And this is because contradictions are the midwives of change. Now, Ruto is a contradiction, and maybe this is what will make him king. Merry Christmas, Mr. Ruto.
And now, our final thought. To call the handshake the path of cowardice is to misread its goodness. But if good attracts evil, the handshake will attract the Lucifer principle. And its Lucifer will come from the judiciary. Let me break this down. The handshake is the path to constitutional change. And constitutional change will resolve all the grievances of the last election, from secession to the Maraga fiasco. Uhuru has already told us to prepare for constitutional change. However, constitutions are only made in times of crisis. If you make them in the absence of a crisis, they will precipitate a crisis. If this maxim is true, the handshake cannot produce a new constitution without a crisis. And this is how Maraga becomes the Lucifer principle of the handshake. Maraga will dissolve parliament for failing to pass the gender bill. And this is the crisis we need for constitutional change to happen. With parliament dissolved, a little general election will ensue. This election will be held alongside a referendum. The referendum will create the position of Prime Minister and a ceremonial president. And this is the path of the handshake. It will end with constitutional change.